Martin, I would like you to tell me your life story as a child, as far as you can remember. And go ahead, the stage is yours.
Well, I don't remember exactly when I was born, but I was born in 1926, year 26, October 2nd, to a family of, there were already 6 kids in the family, 5 girls and 1 boy, and I was the 7th child.
Hi, Mom. I'd like you to explain to me your experience with Martin Glade.
Okay. Martin Glade was my grandfather, and I grew up extremely close with him. He was a Holocaust survivor. He was born in Hungary, and at the age of 17, he was taken to be in a forced labor camp. And most of his family were killed. Most of them were killed in Auschwitz.
When I was 4, I started Cheder, but by that time I already knew how to read, as far as in Hebrew, because my mother used to teach me. It's hard. I did not know how hard it's going to be.
Tell me about your experiences through anti-Semitism.
Well, there is like an undertone that I feel like always happens with being Jewish, and it comes with being Jewish, and you know, just like if you're Jewish, that's the one thing that you're known for. You're known for being Jewish. You're always being called a Jew.
So again, so many things, good, bad, or otherwise, we were different. They made us different. And it's nothing that I have to remember somebody explained it to me why. That's the way I grew up.
You don't want to make a big fuss about it because, you know, it's not a big deal to me.
As big of a deal it wasn't a big deal because that's the way it was. Pesach, sometimes people ask me what was that I remember the best thing as far as home. Can we cut it?
All right, we got to stop that. I don't really want to talk about that.
So when I was in high school, I decided I wasn't crazy about hanging out with friends too much. They were partying every Friday, and I was not really into it. And my grandparents lived down the street from me, and my grandma would make a Shabbat dinner every Friday night, and I would go over there with them, and I just loved it. I loved eating her food and sitting with them and talking, and I would go to temple with them. We would go to temple on Friday nights. I just loved being with them.
It happens to be the holidays, as far as memory.
It's the hardest, isn't it?
It is the hardest because those were the extreme fun part of the life.
And most of my friends were Jewish, so I didn't really hear derogatory comments or anti-Semitism thrown at me. Of course, we learned about the Holocaust, and we learned about, you know, what the Jewish people have gone through, and you know, over the time, I'd say for the last 8 to 10 years, things have gotten really increased in terms of, you know, threats against Jews and the way people talk about Jewish people.
When you ask me anti-Semitism, every year it got worse and worse, okay? But in Mishkolz I had it, other than going to this military type of a deal, I lived very much in a Jewish area, unless if I have ventured into some areas, I felt fairly comfortable because we were too much surrounded with the Jews.
There were many times that, you know, where it was just at first funny and, you know, it wasn't a bad thing.
And it was just like, oh, they're calling me Jewish, okay, not that big of a deal. And it got to the point where it was just like, okay, we can just use this guy as like a punching bag just because of, you know, his religion.
My grandfather, my father's side, he lived further away. He was an elderly guy. He went to the synagogue every morning early. It was winter time. And some of the people wondered how come he's not there yet in the morning. And so they were tracing towards his home. So they found him in a pool of blood in the snow. He was still alive, but they were beating him up. Now, a guy, elderly guy in his 80s, was just beating up.
I was somewhere around maybe 15, 16 at that time. You walk on the street, you don't realize that somebody goes by you and you walk by him and all of a sudden somebody hits you in the head and he just walks on and I just walk on. You don't ask questions, you just go on. It's
why didn't you ask a question? Why are you beating
to
me?
ask questions? You don't want to get beat up more, so you just go on. It's just a way of life.
When one person riles it up, pretty much brought everybody with them.
The teachers sometimes riled up the kids during the hours in the class when I used to be scared to go out to the bathroom.
You know, it got physical and I burned bridges with people that I really thought were friends with me and that I knew my whole life.
But there was a difference. There was something as later on, some of those people, as once I thought they were friends, believe me, they were no friends after a while. Like, if you want to mistreat somebody, it's easy to mistreat a stranger, but it's harder to mistreat a friend, right? When a friend hates you, all of a sudden, that's a little bit harder to swallow.
My grandfather said the laws, they kept tightening the screws on the Jews up until the point where they basically said, yeah, you can't even live in your house anymore. You all need to leave.
1939 started the screws kind of getting, and always more and more things. We got kind of used to it. Nights worse, nights worse, nights worse. So anti-Semitism was a way of life.
When I grew up with a lot of Jewish people around me, and I never thought about making sure that my kids grew up in a place where there was a lot of Jews, because I didn't think it was, you know, a big deal, because I just didn't expect that if they were a real minority at a school or at a club or, you know, wherever they would be, they would feel marginalized by things people would say to them and pointing out that they're Jewish, even if it's just as a joke. I didn't realize that it was something that could happen because it never happened to me.
He attributes his survival to is just one thing at a time. If you only think about taking one foot in front of the other, and you can't save the world, you can just take one step in front of the other. Don't think about all the horrors. Don't talk about all the horrors. Just one step in front of the other, one day at a time. You can focus on that. Then you can't spin out of control on the negativity. You need to stay positive. Now that doesn't mean he wasn't a cynic, because he really was a cynical man too. And one of the cynical things he said was, it will happen again. Because anti-Semitism will never be fully gone from this world. It has been there since the beginning of time, and it will always be there. And he said that people don't appreciate peace. There will always be people who don't appreciate peace. And when things get bad, they look for someone to hate, a group to hate. And Jews just happen to be the one. It seems now that he was right. It's back. It's rising. I mean, when I was a teen, I had a lot of Jewish friends. I felt very comfortable with who I was. I never felt threatened or felt like I needed to hide who I am.
So I said, well, I'm going to take off the yellow star. And I put on a hat which Jews did not wear. It was more a military type of a cap. I thought, "Ah, maybe I can make it without wearing the star."
And yet now, my children who are Jewish, they wear their chai or their Jewish star, and I'm constantly sticking it inside their shirt. Because I'm not sure if they're safe anymore.
And then,
Keep your thought now,
okay,
because we're running out of the first thing.
So we had a bit of a different relationship, him and I.
Wait on a minute. I'll just hold that thought because we're getting to the end of the tape.
Oh, okay.